peacefully protesting in Nigeria were killed and massacred by the Nigerian army. Now I want to bring this to your attention. The biggest threat in Nigeria, we know what that biggest threat is. It is Boko Haram, a terrorist organization that has been terrorizing people in Nigeria. For that coward military, Nigerian military, to go after, and instead of going after Boko Haram, they go after a bunch of peaceful people who are protesting peacefully.
The Nigerian military are cowards. That was the message, loud and clear, from an Iranian official named Saeed Abdi, speaking publicly about Nigeria's fight against Boko Haram. And honestly, he was being generous, because if we're telling the truth in this country, the military isn't just acting like cowards, it's become a symbol of helplessness, a force with firepower, uniforms, budget, but no results. A force that has turned crying into a strategy and press releases into victory. Now, of course, the headlines tried to soften it. Oh, he didn't mean it that way. He was criticizing the government, not the soldiers. He was misunderstood. But let's cut the games. When the world looks at Nigeria's military, they don't see strength. They don't see discipline. They don't see boldness. They see failure. They see excuses. They see years of bloodshed and no end in sight. And who do we blame? Foreign powers? No, we blame ourselves. Because no matter how painful it is to admit, we have allowed cowardice to take charge in a country that should be leading Africa's military doctrine. For over a decade now, Boko Haram has held parts of this country hostage. They've bombed schools, kidnapped children, slaughtered farmers, ambushed soldiers, and despite trillions spent and thousands of lives lost, the situation is still the same, if not worse. And yet, what does the military do? They come online, they tweet, they post statements, they warn, they deny, they blame the media. They say things like, technically defeated. They ask citizens to be patient. They give medals for surviving instead of winning. Meanwhile, the people are burying their loved ones. Meanwhile, villages in the northeast are ghost towns. Meanwhile, women are raising children in IDP camps, still waiting for the day they can go home. And in all this, someone like Ibrahim Traoré, a young, fearless captain in Burkina Faso, shows us what real military leadership looks like. A man who took power not to enrich himself, but to defend his land. He didn't tweet through his insecurity problem. He reorganized, he equipped, he engaged. And today, the Burkinabe people, despite having far fewer resources than Nigeria, are finally breathing again. Compare that to Nigeria, a country with one of the biggest military budgets in West Africa, with drones, with air power, with international training. And still, Boko Haram is a household name. And don't get it twisted, we are not disrespecting the soldiers who are dying in the bush. Those ones are victims of a corrupt and cowardly leadership. Victims of generals who prefer contracts over combat. Victims of a system where the uniforms are heavy, but the command is empty. Because real leadership isn't about press briefings, it's about results. And Saeed Abdi was right to say what many are too afraid to say, that our military, or at least the men leading it, have failed this nation in the worst possible way. They've allowed a terror group to outlive 3 presidents. They've allowed weapons to fall into enemy hands. They've allowed barracks to decay. They've allowed morale to crash. They've allowed the world to mock the so-called giant of Africa. And instead of being angry about the insult, we should be angry about the reality that made the insult possible. Because deep down, we all know, if Nigeria had a Traoré, Boko Haram would be history. If Nigeria had a military with backbone, not backroom deals, the Northeast would be free. If our leaders fought terrorists with half the energy they used to fight protesters, this country would be unshakable. But no, what do we get? When a soldier complains on social media, he's arrested. When civilians raise concerns, they're called unpatriotic. When a foreign official tells the truth, the government tries to save face. But who's saving the lives of our people? Who's defending the villages surrounded by bandits? Who's helping the farmers who can't return to their land? Who's standing for the parents whose children were kidnapped and never found? That's the real question. Let's ask the real question now. Why has Boko Haram lasted this long? It's not because they're stronger. It's not because they have better weapons. It's because they believe in something. And our so-called military leadership believes in nothing but their own pockets. The Nigerian military has numbers. It has international support. It has funding. It has air power, but it has no soul. Because when leadership is corrupt, the boots on the ground suffer. When generals sit in air-conditioned offices, signing phantom contracts for uniforms and bullets that never arrive, who pays the price? The ordinary soldier. You think our boys are cowards? No, they are brave, they are broken, and they are betrayed. They're sent into Sambisa without proper intelligence. They're given rifles with no magazines. They fight insurgents wearing sandals while their commanders drive bulletproof convoys in Abuja. And when they die, there's no honor, no reform, just silence. This is not cowardice from the bottom. This is cowardice from the top. And that's why Ibrahim Traore's name shakes this region. Because the man didn't wait for France. He didn't wait for ECOWAS. He didn't wait for budget approval. He saw that his people were bleeding, and he said, I will bleed with them if I must, but I will not stand aside. That's leadership. Traoré restructured command, cut off corrupt networks, and took the war directly to the insurgents. He didn't send soldiers to die for nothing. He led from the front. He fought for morale, for dignity, for sovereignty. And today, even though Burkina Faso still faces challenges, its people can feel a shift. They feel defended, they feel respected, they feel led. Compare that to Nigeria. Here, when soldiers cry, they are court-martialed. When they desert because of trauma, they are shamed. When they speak out, they are silenced. And when international voices like Saeed Abdi speak the hard truth instead of reflection, we give reactions. Let's be real. Saeed didn't say anything the average Nigerian isn't already thinking. The only difference is he had the platform and he didn't sugarcoat it. But instead of reflecting, our government will likely call it a foreign attack on our sovereignty. Let me ask you, what sovereignty? The sovereignty we begged the US to help us protect? The sovereignty that allowed terrorists to overrun a military base? The sovereignty that saw over 200 schoolgirls kidnapped from Chibok and never returned? You want to defend the image of the military? Then fix it. Give soldiers proper pay. Stop stealing security votes. Punish commanders who enrich themselves off war. Audit the defense budget. Honor the dead. Support the living. And most of all, bring this war to an end. Not with talk, with action. We've seen what action looks like. It looks like a 35-year-old soldier in Ouagadougou who refuses to watch his people suffer. It looks like local defense groups being armed and trained to protect their communities, not just abandoned. It looks like state institutions prioritizing survival over ceremony. Burkina Faso has shown what is possible when courage meets commitment. So what's Nigeria's excuse? Let's talk facts. Nigeria has over 200 million people, a defense budget in the billions, one of the largest militaries in Africa, decades of experience with insurgency, and yet Boko Haram still exists. ISWAP still exists. Bandits now operate in the northwest. And now, even Abuja is not safe. What exactly are we doing? Every new chief of army staff comes with a fresh uniform and the same empty promises. We will flush them out. We are winning the war. Victory is near. Near where? The only thing that's near is the next budget cycle and the next PR campaign. If we had a Traoré in Nigeria, things would look very different. Because leadership is not about position, it's about presence. When last did a Nigerian military leader visit the front line without a media team, without a convoy, without warning? When last did a defense minister face the families of fallen soldiers and apologize, not defend? When last did a general say, this war is not over until we bring every single one of our people home? We can't remember, because it hasn't happened. Instead, we get medals, speeches, and more silence. But the people are watching. The world is watching. And now, thanks to voices like Saeed Abdi, the international community is no longer pretending either. They see what we see. That Nigeria's military, not the soldiers, but the structure, is crumbling under the weight of its own lies. Let's not get it twisted. The Nigerian military has brave men. We have fighters. We have warriors. We have sons of this land who are willing to give everything for Nigeria. But bravery on the battlefield means nothing when cowardice is sitting in the high command. How can a soldier be bold when his commanders are stealing his rations? When the only uniforms getting richer are the ones furthest from the front lines? We don't just have a war problem. We have a leadership crisis, a moral collapse. Because no matter how many rifles you buy, if the men calling the shots are afraid of accountability, afraid of the truth, afraid of losing their privileges, the war will never end. And that's why people are starting to listen to men like Saeed Abdi. Not because they love Iran, not because they want foreign influence, but because someone, anyone is finally saying what our own leaders won't. That what's happening in Nigeria is a disgrace. That our so-called war on terror has become a money-making scheme. That our army has been turned into a tool for intimidation, not liberation. That we are running in circles while the enemy gets stronger. But while Saeed Abdi's words sting, they also wake us up. Because sometimes it takes an outsider to tell you what you already know deep inside. And what we know is that this can't continue. Nigeria cannot afford another 10 years of excuses. Another decade of press statements and body bags. Another generation growing up knowing only fear, only displacement, only trauma. We need a shift, not in logo, not in slogans, but in leadership, real, courageous, honest leadership. And that's why the example of Captain Ibrahim Traoré matters so much. Because here is a young soldier in a poorer country, under sanctions, with limited resources, and yet he rose up. He said, enough. He didn't wait for elections. He didn't wait for foreign validation. He saw that his people were suffering, and he stepped forward, not to enrich himself, but to fight. Today, Burkina Faso is rebuilding. Its people are hopeful, not because everything is perfect, but because they see a leader who is fighting for them, not for himself. And that's what Nigeria is missing. Courage, not in the trenches, but at the top. We don't need more uniforms. We need bold hearts. We don't need more military bases. We need military justice. We don't need more silence. We need voices that will call out corruption, even from within. Because as long as the army is afraid of the truth, the people will never feel protected. And so, to the Nigerian government, stop attacking critics. Start attacking the problem. Stop defending your image. Start defending the people. Stop arresting whistleblowers. Start arresting looters. Stop pretending you're winning. Start proving it. And to the Nigerian people, don't wait for permission to demand change. Don't let patriotism be defined by those who've never paid the price of loyalty. Real patriotism is not blind obedience. It's demanding the best from those who lead. If a soldier speaks out, stand with him. If a voice abroad calls us out, don't be ashamed. Be angry. Be motivated. Because sometimes it takes truth from a stranger to wake up a sleeping giant. This country belongs to us all, not to cowards in camouflage, not to commanders collecting allowances while our children dodge bullets. And if we want Nigeria to rise again, to truly become the giant of Africa, then we must stop rewarding failure with silence. Because silence is dangerous. Silence is surrender. And this country has surrendered enough, from the northeast to the northwest. From the kidnapped to the killed, from the betrayed to the broken. This message is for you. Nigeria must choose cowardice or courage, collapse or change, denial or deliverance. And if our leaders won't choose, then the people must. Because if a young captain in Burkina Faso can stand up and fight, then what excuse does Nigeria have?